And Jimmy has just defeated Alexis's Misdreavus with his Typhlosion, who managed to defeat 4 of Alexis's Pokémon. Will Jimmy's next challenger be able to take out his Typhlosion? Red closed his eyes, trying to get the mental image of a cocky young boy laughing out of his head. Pichu. Take that thunder. Red stared in surprise. Not only did this new boy challenge him, but also ordered his last Pokémon to take Pikachu's thunder, whom was also Red's last Pokémon. Both were tired and aching, wishing to finally end this battle, in their favor. Pika Pichu. Pichu shouted, leaping into the air and taking the entire attack, twitching slightly as it landed on the ground, falling on the snow and not rising. Pika. Pikachu asked, startled as it obviously hadn't expected the move, nor did Red to be honest. You think that's the best I have, Red? There's a reason why I came all the way up this mountain. I'm not going to back down now. Gold shouted, fire burning in his eyes while Red looked at the Pichu as it stirred in complete shock and confusion. Do it, Pichu. Thunder. Pika. Pikachu shouted, eyes wide as it jumped, trying to dodge, but in its tired state it couldn't move as fast as before. Pichu jumped upright, throwing its arms to the air as the clouds above stirred, a giant bolt of thunder falling from the sky in an epic display of pure and utter raw power. Pikachu's thunder and Pikachu's remaining power combined in a move that would possibly kill a weaker Pokémon. Pikachu. Pikachu screamed in pain, its exhausted body too weak to do anything as it fell, so slowly. Red was running, skidding to a stop to hold his remaining Pokémon, gently lifting it from the ground as it was obviously knocked out and smoking, twitching feebly. Gold had a breathless look on his face, a smile as he looked at the fallen Red and Pikachu. I did it, oh Arceus, I did it. Gold panted, looking at his team, their Pokeballs tightly fastened to his hip as he looked at Red's, whom were just laying in the snow as they didn't have a Pokeball nearby. He felt guilt rise in his throat as he saw the Charizard, large gouges in the skin from Feraligator's jaws. Venusaur, burnt and twitching from Typhlosion's flames, and Blastoise bleeding and shell cracked from Meganium's frenzy plant. Espeon was sprawled on her side, not moving as her fur was splotched with bruising in an array of colors from Togetic's brutal attacks, and Snorlax, bloody from Scissor's sharp claws. Finally, Pikachu, who wasn't moving in Red's arms, and Red himself, who seemed just as frozen as the mountain he lived on. Gold suddenly felt hollow. He didn't want this. Oh Arceus, I'm sorry. Gold stuttered, stumbling away and racing off into the cavern below, trying to forget the awful stillness of Red. Red. The crimson eyes snapped up, looking at Blue, who was looking at him concerned. Come on, the battle's between Paul and Ash. I think they want us to watch. Blue urged, and Red gave a slight nod. Red gave one look to Blue, who smiled and gently pushed him towards the benches on Paul's side of the field, waving dismissively to explain to the rather confused May, Max, Dawn, Misty, and Brock. Red walked across, sitting down quietly and rubbing Pikachu, who had recovered from the earlier battle. Red looked up, Paul standing before him and blocking the stadium lights in his eyes. Thanks for helping, Paul clarified, and Red knew just how hard those words probably were. Red gave a sharp nod, Pikachu squealing happily while playfully knocking Paul's back with his tail, causing the other to approach his position carefully. Welcome to the final battle of our semifinals. In addition to a 6-on-6 Pokémon battle, the field will change terrain randomly. The field will be reset after each break, which will occur after the first challenger has run out of 3 Pokémon. The final battlers today are Ash and Paul. The field has randomly been selected as a grassy terrain. The first to attack will be Ash. We await the trainer's Pokémon. Red watched carefully, knowing full well that Ash probably retrieved Pokémon from other areas he had traveled to. His part could be one that was completely random. I choose you, Gliscor. Ash shouted, a large flying scorpion-like Pokémon taking the air as it stared at Paul with a smirk. Gliscor. Weavile. Stand by for battle. We. Begin. Weavile. Blizzard. Dodge it. Gliscor dodged, swooping down while twirling through the blizzard, wincing as the hail struck it slightly. Follow it. Paul shouted, Weavile spinning its body to chase after Gliscor, surprising the creature and causing it to land, wincing in pain. X Scissors. Metal Claws. The two attacks collided, neither gaining ground as the two battled, wincing as slowly their energy drained. Weavile. Weavile smirked, clamping down on a surprise attack on Gliscor's neck while still holding the metal claws. Red smirked slightly as Paul looked slightly surprised at the added attack, giving a nod while Weavile jumped away, Gliscor taking off into the air with a slight tremble. Well, it seems that Weavile has taken it upon itself to attack without command. Come on Gliscor. Screech and swoop in again for another X scissors. Gliscor let out a piercing screech, Red's Pikachu's eyes flattening at the sound the two had grown used to from the wild Golbat around their home. Weavile flinched, hands moving towards its ears as it growled, releasing a strong ice beam and catching Gliscor on surprise as it spun, trying to dodge and wincing as the ice formed on its tail, causing it to crash. Now. Metal Claw. X Scissors. The two attacks collided once more, neither gaining ground as Paul smirked slightly, noticing the same position. Blizzard. No. Gliscor, get out of there. Weavile let the blizzard go, blasting out and slamming into Gliscor, Weavile spinning and releasing a powerful slash, causing Gliscor to tumble into the air. Wincing as the entire left side of its body was frozen, it shrieked loudly in pain, knowing it wouldn't hold on much longer. Weavile. Jump up and finish this with Night Slash. Sky Uppercut. The two attacks collided, one of Gliscor's claws blocking both of Weavile's claws, the other swinging around and smashing into Weavile just as Weavile released a powerful dark pulse, catching Asho and surprise as Gliscor slammed into the ground, skidding and not rising. Gliscor is unable to battle. You did good Gliscor, return. Return. Paul nodded, calling back his wincing and panting Weavile. Go. Snorlax. Red arched an eyebrow, seeing the large and obviously fat Pokemon, out of shape as it growled low, staring with a dopey look. Go, Ursaring. Ash had his teeth clenched as he stared at Paul, who stared icily back, Ursaring growling as it stared at Snorlax. Ice Punch. Hammer Arm. The two attacks colliding, Snorlax frowning as the two Pokemon were forced away, Ursaring skidding while Snorlax actually fell onto its back, struggling before rising and frowning. What a shame. Snorlax has such potential only to be used like that. Hammer Arm again. The two attacks collided as Snorlax once more used Ice Punch, quickly being overpowered. Body Slam. Paul's eyes widened as Snorlax simply fell onto Ursaring, burying the Pokemon beneath the dark blue and cream-colored fat. It seems that Snorlax has completely engulfed Ursaring. Paul growled, teeth gritting together as Snorlax didn't move, simply laying on Ursaring. Minutes drawled on, and Red was watching Snorlax carefully, looking at the fat between the ground and the edges of the creature, looking for ripples. We are unable to see the status of Ursaring. The announcer stated, rather awkwardly while nothing was happening. Come on Ursaring. Paul muttered, watching as a few more minutes drawled on, then a low grumble from Snorlax as suddenly the entire beast was lifted up. I can't believe this. It seems that Ursaring is actually managing to lift up Snorlax. Rang. Ursaring roared, teeth lashing as it glowed a faint red, anger overcoming it. Hammer Arm. Paul shouted, and Ursaring threw Snorlax, slamming both arms powerfully into the creature, forcing Snorlax to slam into the ground, the field cracking under the weight as Snorlax groaned, hit by the two super effective attacks with the ability increase of attack power. Snorlax is unable to battle. It's not looking good for Ash, who is down 2 Pokemon while Ash still has all of his. Return. Paul frowned, recalling the nearly fainted Pokemon, causing Ash to growl and throw his next Pokemon out. Go. Sceptile. A large lizard appeared, growling as it pulled out a twig, sticking it in its mouth and crossing its arms, smirking with a cocky look. Magmortar, stand by for battle. Paul shouted, recognizing the grass-type features. Well well. Sceptile and Magmortar, 2 are powerhouses, will Paul gain victory with his type advantage? I have faith in you Sceptile Bullet Seed. Flamethrower. The fire attack exploded, Sceptile moving with surprising speed to avoid the flames. From the bullet seed smoke erupted, and Sceptile dodged, kicking off the wall and lunging towards Magmortar with surprising speeds with a charged leaf blade. Fire Punch. Flames and grass hit, causing light gray smoke to puff up, temporarily clouding the sight of the two Pokémon while Paul and Ash stood there tense, smoke spiraling as another plume erupted. It seems now that the battle has changed. Now the winner decides on whoever trained their Pokémon to respond to situations without command. Paul let out a low breath, closing his eyes while more smoke erupted, Paul throwing an arm up to try and block the chunks of rock from hitting his face. It is impossible to tell who has advantage here. Magmortar. Smog. Paul shouted, and after a few seconds, thick black smoke filled the air and destroyed all hope for Ash or Paul to see what was going on. It seems that Paul has made visibility even more impossible. Has Paul trained his Pokémon to think for themselves in battle? Hand in there, Sceptile. Ash shouted frantically, and Paul watched, silently looking at the field as fire and smoke bellowed out. More plumes of fire before one insane plume, thicker than before, caused Paul to recoil and surprise overheat. SCEP Teal. Mortar. Both cries were long and painful as slowly, nothing was heard and no more fire was shot into the air. We are unable to tell the status of both Pokémon. Trainers. Is it okay for us to clear the field? The ref called to both trainers, Ash giving a quick nod while Paul echoed it, watching carefully as smoke still rolled. Both trainers have given us the okay to clear the fields, we will see who remains momentarily. Large fans appears, blowing quickly as large gouges in the earth appeared, as well as large slicing and cuts from the earth from Sceptile's leaf blades. Seared rock and chunks were melted in some areas. Slowly, the two Pokémon were revealed. Both Sceptile and Magmortar are unable to battle. Ash has lost 3 Pokémon. We will have a short break. Paul recalled his fainted Pokémon, turning and walking back towards Red, who was watching almost lazily. Ash never taught his Pokémon to attack without his commands. Paul nodded, and Red gave a small smirk, eyeing Paul's waist as he plucked a single Pokéball. He held it to Paul, who took it and eyed it carefully with a small frown. Torterra. Why do you want me to use him? Paul asked, and Red nodded to across the field, where Blue was saying something, waving his arms wildly to emphasis, possibly about how to use a powerful Pokémon. I see. I trust you. Paul nodded to Red, who gave a slight nod himself to Paul. The trainers are back on the field. And ready for the second half. Trainers, release your Pokémon. Go Torterra. Go. Charizard. Red sat upright, watching as a large orange dragon-looking creature landed with a roar. It was odd, and Red should have realized it sooner. It was only logical that Ash would have a Bulbasaur and a Squirtle also. Perhaps even evolved if the Charizard was. Well, a Charizard and a Torterra. The two powerhouse starter types of different regions. This battle could go any way. Powerhouse. Paul muttered, and Torterra tensed, growling at Charizard, who roared back, already looking upset with each other. Charizard. Flamethrower. Leaf Storm. The two attacks collided, amazingly enough, counteracting and leaving them equally balanced while Charizard snorted angrily. Again, Leaf Storm. The leaves swooped up towards Charizard, who rolled to dodge it. It wasn't incredibly fast, but still enough to be dangerous. Flamethrower. Deflect it. The attacks were proven harmless while Torterra growled, Charizard snapping back angrily. Swoop down with Fire Fang. Rear then slam onto it. Paul stated with a smirk. Charizard charging with a mouthful of fire as Torterra reared suddenly, Charizard flapping to try and stop its collision course, only for Torterra to slam down, both of its heavy legs stamping firmly on Charizard's wings. No. Charizard, use Flamethrower in Torterra's face. Leech Seed. Charizard released the Inferno while Torterra planted the many seeds upon Charizard, wrapping around it painfully and draining energy. Come on Charizard. Flamethrower once more. Torterra roared, shaking its head angrily as fire burned in its face, causing it to shake and try to avoid the plume, unable to escape it. Torterra. Mega Drain. Keep it at Charizard. Terra. Torterra groaned, more vines slamming into Charizard and sapping its strength. Release it. Paul shouted, Torterra rearing again only for Charizard to scamper away, roaring in pain as the Mega Drain and Leech Seed took its toll. Torterra, return. Paul nodded, causing Ash to look at Paul in surprise as the large continent Pokémon vanished from sight. Go. Honchkrow. Crow. Charizard, take to the air. You too. The two Pokemon flew up, both spiraling into the air as they eyed each other. Flamethrower. Dodge and Dark Pulse. The two Pokemon fired off attacks, Dark Pulse colliding with Flamethrower, creating a small explosion as the two creatures turned, diving around and continuing to fire off attacks. Honchkrow. Night Slash. Honchkrow dove in fast, gaining on Charizard who spun, growling. Metal Claw. The two collided, breaking apart as they turned again, ready for a second collision. Get in there, Charizard. Foul play. What? Ash gasped, not having heard the attack before. Crow. Honchkrow glowed black before slamming into Charizard, the black spreading across the skin of Charizard who flinched, twitching with a roar before plummeting quickly. Red's eyes widened at the surprise attack, he flipped out his Pokédex, looking up the attack. Foul play. Physical. Dark. Inflicts damage depending on amount of attack power of opponent. Red looked back at the battle, noticing how Charizard slammed into the ground, twitching in pain as Honchkrow landed next to Charizard. Well, Honchkrow hit Charizard with Foul Play, one of the strongest Dark-type moves, now with devastating force due to Charizard's high attack status. Charizard. No. Come on, get up. Ash shouted desperately, and Charizard slowly lifted itself, wincing in pain from the incredibly strong attack. Again. Charizard roared once Honchkrow slammed into it again, knocking it back to the ground with a roar. No. Come on, Charizard. Don't give up now. Ash shouted desperately. Can Charizard take it? Two foul play moves back to back, one holds enough force to down most Pokemon. Come on, Charizard. Finish this, Honchkrow. Paul sighed, frowning. He expected more from a Charizard. Charizard exploded upwards in anger. A brilliant glowing red aura caused Honchkrow to flap away, halting its attack in surprise. All right. Go for it, Charizard. Ash shouted, a grin on his face as Charizard erupted, exploding outwards with an inferno with a roar. The flames spreading out in a disc, slamming into Honchkrow who groaned, flopping down and fainting with a single hit. Amazing. It seems that Charizard has activated Blaze. All fire attacks are double powerful now. Who will Paul use now that Honchkrow has fainted? Go, Torterra. Paul shouted, throwing out his Pokemon while Torterra landed, growling and looking nearly healthy. It's Torterra again. Charizard. Flamethrower. Use Earthquake on the ground to move rocks. Paul nodded, Torterra slamming into the ground, causing rocks to jam upwards, creating a shield around Torterra, leaving a panting and tired Charizard, having to land now that it was so tired. Torterra, wait until it gets close, and then fire Frenzy Plant. Paul nodded, Charizard snarling on the other side of the stone barrier. Charizard, try Flamethrower once again. Ash shouted, the blaze-fueled fire not breaking the stone barrier and causing Ash to grit his teeth together. Rock Smash on the rocks. Charizard roared, slamming its claws on the rocks. Once they smashed, it recoiled in surprise, large vines slamming into Charizard ruthlessly and knocking it to the ground without mercy. Unbelievable. Charizard has just been hit by the strongest grass-type move there is. Charizard is down. Charizard moaned, dropping and hitting the ground, Torterra panting and pausing, trying to rise only to fall. Charizard is unable to battle. What is Ash's fifth Pokemon? Go. Infernape. Nape. The flame monkey cried, glaring angrily at Torterra who stomped angrily. An Infernape. The two powerful starters facing off against one another. Ash better tread carefully, having only 2 Pokemon remaining while Paul has 4. Infernape. Flamethrower. Earthquake. The ground rumbled and Infernape howled, being knocked off its feet in surprise. Fire Spin Infernape. Ash shouted, Infernape creating a powerful tornado of flames as Paul's eyes narrowed. Torterra. Leaf Storm and break it apart. The fire was deflected just as Charizard's was and Torterra grunted, sending off another earthquake while simultaneously using Leaf Storm. Well, Torterra is not only using one move, but 2 at the same time. Nape. Infernape shouted, rolling across the ground and wincing, Flame Wheel. The rolling turned, changing into strategic and slamming into Torterra who groaned at the attack, skidding slightly. Infernape. Flamethrower and Don't Let Up. Leaf Storm. The 2 attacks collided, both canceling each other out. It continued, until eventually Torterra slackened slightly, the flamethrower breaking through and burning Torterra, causing it to roar. No. Torterra, use earthquake. Jump. Infernape leapt high into the air and Paul looked at Torterra, noticing the slightly glowing green aura, overgrow. Frenzy plant. Flare blitz. Infernape exploded in bright blue fire, slamming into Torterra's back just as Frenzy plant slammed into Infernape, throwing it across the stage where Infernape flipped, landing with a wince as recoil affected it. Torterra groaned, and slowly the glow vanished, causing Paul to hold up a Pokeball as slowly Torterra dropped, return. And Ash has managed to defeat Torterra. Now it is only 3 Pokemon versus 2. Who will Paul use next? Go. Ursaring. It's Ursaring. Hammer Arm. Close combat. The 2 attacks combined, Ursaring wincing at the impact while Infernape winced itself, although not as bad as Ursaring. Flame Wheel. Catch it with Slash. The 2 attacks collided, Ursaring wincing as it tried to lift up the rolling fireball. Infernape. Close combat. Infernape exploded upwards, slamming a punch in Ursaring's jaw, sending the bear flying, knocked out. Ursaring is down. Now the score is tied, 2-2. Weavile, stand by for battle. Weavile was there again, observing Infernape with a sneer, hissing angrily while it looked rested from its break. Infernape was panting from the battle. Weavile, Blizzard. Infernape, dodge it. Infernape was too tired from its battle, wincing and trying to dodge while the blizzard caught Infernape, freezing its leg. Weavile, Screech. A loud piercing screech caused Infernape to yelp, hissing angrily while clamping its paws over its ears. It looks like Paul may be having an issue with Weavile's moveset. Weavile, Ice Beam. Paul nodded, Infernape using a fist to block the ice beam, looking with frustration as the ice moved up, freezing its arm. Another blizzard and Infernape thrashed, frozen in a position it couldn't move. It looks like Infernape can't move. Weavile, return. Paul nodded, Weavile returning as Paul let out a low breath, throwing his final Pokeball. Go. Electivire. Infernape. Try to get out of there. Giga Impact. A flash of white light, and all that was left was a fainted Infernape. Infernape is down. What will Ash's last Pokemon be? Go get Pikachu. Ash smiled, Pikachu jumping down onto the ring. Red looked forward interestedly. Red understood Paul's plan, have Pikachu fight Electivire until they both were unable to battle. Then, Weavile would remain and Paul would be victor. As amusing as the battle was, there was no way either would win against him. His Pikachu could destroy Ash's at any time. It seems that this is a battle of electric types. I wonder who will win. Alright, Pikachu. We got this. Ash smiled, and made a pointed effort to grab his hat, and shift it so it was backwards. Pika. Red's Pikachu spoke in slight surprise, looking at Red, whom at one time also did that. He knows that this is it. Pikachu Iron Tail. Electivire, protect. Paul nodded, Pikachu's tail slamming into the barrier, pausing until Electivire slammed upwards with a brick break. No. Pikachu, are you okay? Ash cried out. Pikachu skidded with a wince, scowling at Electivire. Pika. Pikachu scowled, nodding as Ash smirked. Alright. Quick attack. Hold it, then low kick. Paul commanded, Electivire waiting before dropping, sending a kick which Pikachu avoided, springing away. Vera. Electivire scowled, snagging Pikachu with its twin tails, grabbing the mouse before holding it in the air. No. Get out of there with Iron Tail. Close combat. Pika. Pikachu shrieked, landing harshly on the ground and getting up with a wince. Pikachu, you okay there buddy? Pika. Pikachu scowled, and Red watched carefully as Pikachu stood. It's showing its power. It shouldn't be able to stand after 2 close combats. Quick attack. Electivire tried to dodge, wincing as it was hit, Pikachu jumping up into the air before smashing down with an Iron Tail. Again. Vera. Electivire winced, throwing up an arm to deflect Pikachu's next attack. Thunder in the ground. Rocks were thrown, Pikachu using quick attack to dodge, jumping into the air in another quick attack, only to be swatted with close combat, but coming down hard with an Iron Tail. I don't believe this. Both Pokemon are swapping moves back and forth. I can't see an end to this. Pikachu shouldn't be able to take this. Pika. Red's Pikachu spoke quietly, obviously looking at the display in slight awe. Impressive they can keep swapping hits. Pika. Pikachu roared, using another quick attack and only being deflected by Brick Break, both Pokemon panting from the attacks. Electivire, finish this. You too, Pikachu. Ash smiled, Pikachu breaking into a powerful quick attack. Giga Impact. Paul nodded, the two Pokemon racing faster and faster at each other. Oh, I can't watch. An explosion dust in the air as Paul closed his eyes, not wanting to see the outcome. Both Pikachu and Electivire are unable to battle. Paul has one Pokemon left, Paul is declared winner. Red gave a nod as the entire arena broke into applause, Ash walking out onto the stage and carefully picking up his Pikachu, sheltering it close. Blue ran out with Ash, walking over to Paul who looked up briefly. Good match, Paul, it was great to battle you. Ash smiled, and Red glanced up, eyes narrowing. How can he be so dismissive? Battles are important, how can he act like it's nothing? You don't care that you just lost? Paul asked coldly, and Ash blinked in surprise. What? No, it was great to battle you. Ash smiled, and Paul just shook his head in disbelief, walking out of the arena. You taught him well. I'm impressed. Blue nodded while Red gave a slight nod. Taught? What? Ash asked with a confused frown. Red nodded to Blue, his Pikachu chirping while Blue shifted. Well, Red and I made a small little competition. I was teaching you strategies and new moves, while Red was doing the same with Paul. Blue winced while the group spun, looking at Blue and Red in shock. What? Isn't that betraying Ash? Max shouted, Red giving a slight shrug, and turned. Guys, it doesn't matter. The times are arranged by the competition tomorrow. Tomorrow it's going to be Red versus Paul. Well, you better not lose. Ash smiled, looking to Red who gave a slight nod, eyes landing on Blue carefully, who gave a nod back. I understand. Don't worry, I won't let go Jimmy beat me. It'll be you versus me, just like old times, Red gave a slight nod, walking out into street. Hey Red. He turned, seeing a familiar head of hair walk towards him, as well as the long cape. Red gave a slight nod as Lance stopped, smiling at him. Hey, I've been watching your battles, as well as your friend Blue. When we watch the Elite Four or gym leaders that came to watch, we try to find the most interesting battlers. Red stopped walking, turning and looking at Lance while crossing his arms, his Pikachu stating rather boldly. Pikachu. It nodded. Anyways, just as a precaution. If you actually lose tomorrow, I was wondering if I could battle you. Red's eyes widened out of surprise, but he only smirked, giving a slight incline of his head. Good, I'll see you later, hopefully in battle the day after tomorrow. Lance smiled and Red gave a slight nod, turning and walking away with a wave. Tomorrow, Red was fighting Paul. XXX. Welcome one and all to the final rounds. Here we have the last two battles, then later today we have our final battle and our winner. From then, the winner will then battle Lance of the Elite Four, and then Cynthia, the champion. Although no titles will be given out, this will be a complete full battle later tomorrow. Today, we have Paul battling Red. There will be no changing field and a full 6-on-6 Pokemon battle. You may use any Pokemon registered prior to this battle, not just the 6 you registered at one time. Paul has first move, begin. Go, Honchkrow. Paul stated, calmly throwing the ball into the air, revealing his flying Pokemon. Red said nothing, letting his eyes look at the Pokemon before drifting to Paul, who shifted slightly under his gaze. Silently he threw one Pokeball into the air, revealing a lavender cat. Red has used Espeon. Why? I'm not sure what's more surprising, the fact that it wasn't Red's Pikachu, or that he willingly used a Pokemon with a type disadvantage. Anyways, Paul has first move, begin. Honchkrow, use Dark Pulse. Paul nodded, Red saying nothing. Espeon hummed, the pulse glowing slightly before vanishing into nothing. Espeon. Espeon cried softly, running forward calmly while Honchkrow spun, swooping down for a commanded Night Slash. Espeon spun, letting out a brightly colored beam which blasted Honchkrow aside, causing the bird to release a dark pulse. Espeon jumped, taking the hit completely and instead spinning, using Psychic to slam Honchkrow into the ground before jumping onto it and slamming it onto the ground. Incredible. Red is taking no chances in this battle and is deflecting every attack Paul throws at it. Honchkrow. Bite. Paul shouted, and Espeon turned in surprise, feeling pain in her tail and spun, yelping at the sudden painful bite. Espeon glowed, her body turning a light pink as she hissed. It seems Espeon has used Power Swap, moving its special attack to her physical attack. Physical attack. Paul muttered, eyes glinting as Espeon spun, slamming her head hard into Honchkrow, causing it to cry out in surprising pain, slamming against the ground and skidding from the intense power. Honchkrow winced, trying to stand up. It seems Espeon just used an incredibly strong return. A move in which power increases by how much the Pokémon enjoys the trainer. Espeon charged in a quick attack, Honchkrow struggling to stand. Honchkrow. Foul play. Espeon shrieked, twitching as the black aura spread over onto Espeon, forcing her off track as she slammed, legs crumpling and it hit the ground, jaw clicking on the platform. Incredible. I've never seen a stronger foul play in my life. That Espeon sure has power. Espeon winced, standing slowly and glaring at Honchkrow, who winced in return. Again. Espeon glowed a light pink, reverting her attack and special attack again, causing foul play to still do damage, but not nearly as much. Bite. Espeon. Espeon growled, her eyes glowing as Honchkrow was lifted, and slammed again and again into the stage with no mercy. Again and again. She let go, letting the limp bird lay there while she winced, taking obvious damage. Honchkrow is out. But Espeon looks incredibly damaged from that attack. Return. Go, Weavile. Paul nodded, throwing out Weavile. Espeon sat, bowing her head as she started to glow, absorbing the light. Weavile, use Hail. Paul shouted, ice taking over and clouds covering the sun, causing Espeon to protest with a yelp as her morning sun was blocked. Now, use Dark Pulse. Weavile obliged. Now Espeon was taking special care to avoid the dark energy. Hone Claws. Paul nodded, Weavile clicking her claws together as they grew slightly longer and sharper. Again, and again. Paul nodded, Weavile continuously using Hone Claws 6 times in quick succession. Espeon. Espeon growled, glowing a light purple just as Weavile did also, Espeon's claws growing longer and sharper. An excellent use of Psyche Up. Now Espeon's status have increased to match Weavile's. Perfect. Paul muttered, a small smirk on his face while Red looked up, slightly surprised. Weavile, use Bite. Weavile lunged, Espeon hissing and charging also, shifting her special attack to attack as it drew close for return. Change it to punishment. Red jerked forward, clapping quickly, Espeon instantly turning, trying to get away but Weavile was too close, the slash hit her flank. Espeon. Espeon shrieked, Weavile jumping away while Red stared in surprise and slight horror as Espeon buckled, dropping onto her knees and staring at Weavile in shock. Unbelievable. Not only is Weavile increased its attack, but it somehow baited Espeon into increasing hers. Using punishment, it increased its normal attack to nearly insane amounts of power, not including type advantage and the increase of Weavile's own power. Red stared, thoughts racing, smart. Baiting Espeon into mimicking status changes. 6 times and 2 changes, as with the formula makes nearly 300 damage, not including types. He nodded, Espeon's jaw dropping as she gasped, dropping limply to her side. I don't believe it. Red's first Pokémon in the entire tournament has finally been taken out. Why, I haven't seen this since Tobias and his Darkrai. Red gently recalled Espeon, and pulled out another Pokeball, looking at Paul with a small smile before he reached up and pulled his hat's brim low, blocking his eyes. What's this? It seems Red is going to use a Pokémon that has not been used before in battle. He threw the ball, it opening up already in an attack, a spiraling inferno of flame which hit Weavile, causing the poor Pokémon to cry out in a dead faint. Weavile. Paul stated in surprise, looking at the fainted creature before looking at the large dragon-looking creature which landed before him. He swallowed, mouth feeling dry as he recalled his Pokémon, looking at the Charizard which was standing on all four legs, looking more like a Rapidash than something which only used two normally. I've never seen a Charizard on four legs. Not to mention how large it is. Paul's going to have a problem with this one. Charizard snorted while Paul carefully threw his Pokeball, revealing Electivire, which snorted, electricity crackling while Charizard's eyes narrowed. Electivire vs. Charizard. What a battle this will be. Electivire, Thunderbolt. Paul commanded, Charizard rearing its head and letting loose a plume of fire, hitting the electricity and forcing its way through, hitting Electivire quickly and causing the creature to stumble back from the strength. Paul gave a slight gasp, looking up at Red who now was just standing there. His hat pulled low so his face was emotionless, casted in shadow. Electivire, Thunder. Paul pointed, the powerful blast zapping Charizard as the beast winced, before rising with a roar, shaking off the attack. Amazing. Charizard has just shaken off a thunder like it was nothing. Charizard roared, flapping up into the air and diving down, flinching as it was hit by another desperate and powerful thunder. Electivire roared, slamming across the ground with a wince as a powerful dragon claw sliced into the Electivire, forcing it across the ground. Electivire. Close combat. Charizard landed, a ball of glowing red appeared in the mouth of Charizard, letting the beast land on four legs as it growled and the small ball grew a brighter and brighter red. Vera. Electivire roared, swinging a punch just as Charizard roared, letting loose a powerful wave of red energy, hitting Electivire and sending him flying in a concentrated fire attack. Charizard just used Heat Wave. Amazing. Electivire is unable to battle. We will have a short break. Paul moved over to his bench, sitting down with a slightly stunned look as he sighed, closing his eyes. Red also moved towards his bench, his Charizard flapping over calmly before jerking its head upwards at the stands, eyeing one of the people selling candy. Red gave a firm frown, Charizard snorting and rolling its eyes as it settled down calmly, dozing off. Hey Red. Red looked up, seeing Blue running towards him, all of Ash's friends and Ash himself over on Paul's side. Paul's upset with this, he knows it's hopeless. Can you stop toying with him and end this already? Blue sighed, Red casting a look at Charizard who puffed smoke at Blue, who just waved it off, slightly annoyed with the large creature. The break is over. Trainers, please reveal your Pokemon. Charizard lumbered over, walking on four legs onto the stadium floor while Paul pulled out a Pokeball. Go! Ursaring! Charizard roared, just as Ursaring formed Charizard had grabbed the bear, flapping twice to rise into the air with amazing speed before tucking the struggling creature in tight and diving, bursting into blue fire as Fire Blitz activated, Charizard slamming into the ground with a confident roar. Amazing. Ursaring is out with a single hit. It doesn't look good for Paul here. Magmortar. Confused Ray. At once the creature spun once landing, staring at the Charizard which looked up, ready to land and attack, only to have its leg buckle and it wince as it fell partially, obviously the move taken effect. Sunny day. Paul nodded and the sky suddenly grew even brighter, just as Charizard snapped at its own tail, hissing in anger as it bit into the fleshy extension. Hyper Beam. Paul nodded, his Magmortar gaining power as Charizard blinked, letting go of its tail once it realized what it had bit and turned. It recoiled, having apparently managed to brace itself slightly for the Hyper Beam, still the attack caused it to tumble, back slamming on the ground as it roared in pain. It jumped to its feet, landing on all fours before charging in an oddly non-Charizard style. Amazing. Charizard has enough strength in its front legs to actually run on them like an Arcanine. And here comes Flare Blitz. The attack fell and even though Magmortar was fire also, the damage had been done, leaving Magmortar fainted. Go, Torterra. Paul nodded the large continent Pokemon landing and roaring at Charizard, just as it had done with Ash's. Red's Charizard bowed its head with a snort, almost an apology. Frenzy Plant. Charizard jumped, the vines grabbing its legs and pulling it back down while Charizard snarled, spitting fire at every vine as it hurried to escape. It bit through, the vines receding as it spun to face Torterra, anger on its face. Now. A large ray of solar beam slammed into Charizard, slamming the Pokémon into the back railing of the stadium, making the stands shake. Charizard rumbled, walking out of the mess with head held high, its body glowing with power while Paul bowed his head, speaking quietly to his Pokémon, "I'm so sorry." Terra. Torterra quietly stated back, "It's okay." And Charizard roared, flames exploding outwards that had heat that the fans felt. At once Paul felt the heat and he ducked his head, trying to not watch the inferno of an instant faint. I can't believe this. I'm not sure even Ho-Oh could create such a flame. Terra. Torterra roared, and before the fire even stopped, Paul quickly recalled his Pokémon, ducking as the fire shot overhead. Charizard stood panting, blast burn effective as it snorted to Paul before lumbering tiredly over to Red, who gently recalled the beast with a smile. Red is the victor. He will battle the victor of Jimmy vs. Blue and continue on to the final round later tonight. Paul. He heard quietly, looking over at Red, who lifted his hat brim slightly, showing him cool crimson eyes, and a nod. In Red's style, that was a good job. Paul echoed back the action.